So with that, let's get into the best practices regarding timesheet capture. As we start this webinar, I always like to kind of kick it off with what's new going on at TopStep, and really what's happening is next week we have another one of our webinars. It's going to be focused on OpenAir and the features to support these concepts in the OpenAir regarding timesheets. We did an OpenAir webinar on timesheets back in 2011, actually, so I figured it was high time we visit that topic again. We also have another OpenAir user group. It's the last one of the year. It's currently scheduled for, yes, I know, Friday the 13th in San Francisco, but it's 11 to 2, and we are going to be hosting it at NetSuite headquarters, actually, in San Mateo. So I hope to see you there if you're in the area. And then with our conference that we're supporting this month is TSW. That's in the Las Vegas area in the fall. So if you're going to be stopping by there, we'll have a booth, so we'd love to see you, say hi, and we'll talk to you then. So let's get into the slide set that I put together today and just kind of have an open discussion about the timesheet policies and things that I've seen work or not work, or that I've heard be requirements over the years of working with professional services organizations. First and foremost, I want to touch on end user ease of use, because you're really relying on people to put that time in. So putting their needs first is almost is definitely a consideration, besides the fact that you have actual data that you have to capture and what's the meaning of all that data. And then I thought I'd wrap it up with some notifications and compliance items, specifically highlighting things that relate to DCA in case you're not aware of that compliance policy. So starting the topics off, I always like to start off with what I think is the most important. Now, actually, timesheets themselves are very important. I do recognize that is about, for 99% of you, that's actually a very important part of understanding what's been delivered to the customer so that you can bill the customer, obviously get income in, pay your people, all that kind of stuff. But the end user is the one that's usually typically responsible for entering the time. So, the onus on them to put the time in is something that really shouldn't be taken lightly, especially especially if you're rolling out a new system and you have like dual entry period of time, or your consultants are having to put time into a third-party system because they're supporting a customer, and a customer requires that time entry as well. So there's a lot of things to think about from a timesheet perspective. So if you reflect on the things that you need internally, I thought I would start off with what does the company need versus what the employee needs. And really there's, I like to call it healthy conflict between the two. From an employee perspective, they want a very easy way to say, here's what I did, here's how much time I spent doing it, and that's it. Like they do a simple, quick and easy, a simple user interface, a mobile device, anything like that, just so they can kind of check in, give you the information that you need, and move on with the stuff that they need to do for the company. From a company perspective, there tends to be a hanging on of details that gets added to the timesheet. Like, well, since they're already doing their timesheet, could they also tell us this and this and this and this and this, and things that you need to track as an organization, but you also need to be able to support the accuracy of that data and be able to understand how that data reflects on other parts of the organization, like how are we doing plan versus actual, and do we have audit trails of what we change and what we don't change. So there's usually a healthy conflict with the level of detail that an employee really wants to put in and the level of detail and pieces of information that the company would really like to see to support a variety of data analysis needs. So here it's really, it's all in the details, I like to say, or in the lack of details. So from an end user to kind of meet their needs and get their data in quickly, make it easy for them to find projects. That tends to put some onus back in the back office, or maybe on project managers, or maybe a resource manager, to say, you know what, I'm going to make sure that you only are supposed to, scheduled to be working on the projects that you can put time in against. So something simple like that in a PSA tool can really make a difference, so that people aren't scrolling up and down and trying to find the right project, or they have some kind of search option, but make it easy to locate projects. Not only is it a volume of projects thing, but it's a naming convention as well. So if you have any way to have some kind of unique naming convention or a numbering system or a prefix system or something like that, that would actually help the end users find projects easier. I know internally to TopStep, a lot of my projects are called business efficiency, and so we it's not as unique as it should be, and so I'm also guilty of making it a little difficult for my team to find projects. From a time perspective, I have seen the policy of getting your time in before month-end close. And month-end close, like for the month of September, the month-end close was Saturday the 30th. And to expedite and meet certain timelines that the company itself has declared necessary for financial reporting, for example, or stockholders or something. Sometimes there's a force to say, you know what, get your timesheet in Friday night. If you still have work to do on Friday night or Saturday, do your best guess. I have seen that a few times. It's not a DCA compliance thing. So those kind of companies don't have to fall into a DCA compliance audit. But that's always something that it's a little, to the end user, it's probably a challenge because they're trying to guess what they're going to spend, but they haven't spent it yet. So just keep that in mind. It's kind of hard for people to guess, and if they're guessing wrong, will they get penalized for it? So really, if the policies can be put into place in such a way that they're able to put just actuals in, that really does help the end user, and it also helps the back office because you don't have to deal with adjustments as often along the way. And a pretty popular one in the world of today is being able to give them mobile entry, be able to have some kind of offline entry, especially for those consultants in the field that are doing a lot of traveling, any kind of option where they're not having to be tethered to their laptop or their desktop, God forbid. They really helps them out a lot, and that also has to have an ease of use feel. So make the timesheet a simple thing that they can find what they need and type in what they need in a quick manner. Now, there's also a healthy conflict between the employees, the end users, and project managers and what the project managers need to do. So again, employees, they want to be able to tell the project managers, here's what I've delivered in a very quick and easy manner. And you're going to hear me repeat the quick and easy, simple, that kind of thing. That will help you with data accuracy from your end users on timesheets. Project managers, however, they have a project that they're managing, and to some degree they want to have a way to track in some cases, very minute detail of where are we at in the project plan, what's our completion rate and burn rate against this particular activity, what's the % complete of that activity from a work perspective, from an hours perspective. So they also will drive some detail needs that the employee themselves knows they're just doing the work. So there is a little bit of a conflict there, especially when it comes to how much detail are you putting into a project plan. So you have sort of here's what I do, but here's what I'm going to do next, and here's what I'm never going to do. Now, the best laid plans or high-level plans, I think, to sort of match up that need from the project managers of a detail perspective and the need for the end users to keep it simple is watch how you're building the project plan in your time capture system. Some systems will allow you to have sort of high-level time tracking activities and then another tracking mechanism or object to be able to say, and here's what I did, like the to-do list type thing. In other systems, you have to kind of combine those two together, and really the more detailed the task list for time capture, the less accurate your time may actually be. Because if you have a series of tasks that are budgeted to take 1 hour, I can't imagine how long that timesheet's going to take to put into the system. There's just a lot of detail that you would want somebody to spend time on to allocate 15 minutes here, an hour there, 30 minutes here. So really, if you have a really big, detailed project plan, look at it from a project manager should look at it from what can I reasonably expect people to understand what to charge to based on the work they're doing. if I'm writing a book, I don't want to have to record time against the acknowledgments, the foreword, chapter 1, chapter 2, the summary. I don't want to record time at that level of detail. I just want to record time to writing a book. So that may force your project plan or your task plan for time capture to be at a higher level. And in some cases, it may be just sort of at a methodology phase level, like kickoff, design, initiation, development, testing and validation, deployment. Those could be levels of detail that you track your time to, and those have budget of hours and timelines that you can manage to. So there is a little bit, and this is a gray area. It doesn't apply universally to every type of project, even in your own organization. So some projects should have 10, 15, 20 different activities because it captures the budgets you want to track. Some may just have one activity. And it's really, what does the PM need to manage the project, to understand if there's going to be a potential overrun, and how can we keep that still very simple for the end user to know, I'm doing testing, I'm recording my time against testing. Okay. And definitely limit tasks for the end user to select from. I'm going to, again, keep it simple, keep it easy. The only things that they should be actually being able to work on at this point in time in the project are what should be visible. So don't give them the, the workshop task. If the workshop is closed, done, not going back to it again. So close it out, let them have the stuff that's current or future going for entry. Now switching from the end user, there's really a data capture need as well. And what I find interesting in deploying PSA tools and working with customers on PSA tools, timesheets are actually a very simple concept, but they drive a lot of discussion because that's a central touch point for a lot of individuals in the organization. It includes the employee, includes the project manager, includes resource management from an actuals perspective, it includes executives for metrics, it includes finance for billing, it includes a lot of stuff. So everyone tends to have a need for what type of data to capture. So at a basic level, the timesheet has to reflect how much time did I spend doing this work, and what's the level of increment or granularity. Do you record time to the hour or the half hour or the 15 minutes? Or do you use timers and you start a timer and you stop a timer and it captures everything down to like the microsecond type thing, like a clock? So that the level of time increment that you have to decide on your timesheets really is driven by the nature of the business. And from a best practice there, a lot of times for professional services organizations, 15 minutes is pretty common. But if you're doing something like you're working in a lawyer office or working on matters and stuff like that, a timer functionality may actually be more appropriate. Other things that I've seen attached to a timesheet, because it's really an association naturally of what people are working on, are things like tickets. So I'm a customer success manager. I'm working on customer tickets as they're coming in. I'm recording my time against that work, because some of you may be in front of managed services organizations where those hours are logged and there's a bucket of hours to manage along the way. So a ticket availability associated to the timesheet sort of kills two birds with one stone, so you're getting accurate information by selecting the ticket on the timesheet. But that leads to, how do I get the ticket information? If I don't type it in manually, which could be fat-fingered, but with the ticket information, can I build an integration with timesheets and make the integration a little bit ticket smart? So that is also something that's really an association of how much time it will save your end users in putting the timesheets in when you consider an integration. There's also like, how much time am I investing in things? And those things could be something like internal products, capital expenditures, customer sat, or building out more of the organization, doing some pre-sales or building out marketing items. All of those things are things that have to be captured as well. So it's not just, okay, I worked on client work, so I get to record the hour. If people work on other things, and this is where it tends to drive the need to track things like a 40-hour worksheet or a full week timesheet, a 37.5-hour worksheet if you're in the UK, those kind of work schedule type things. So you have ways to track what else are people doing other than the billable services work that I need them to do as part of an organization. And the last one I see, not as much anymore, but it depends on, again, the business. If you have a situation where there's an overtime or shift work where that impacts either the cost that you're tracking against the user, maybe you're paying people time and a half for overtime, or the bill rate to a customer, so they get, they have to pay premiums for somebody to work on a Sunday or Saturday. So all of those, those are things that can be configured or discussed or built into timesheets, but the reason you would need that is because of the way your business is. So that's why the timesheet itself, not every timesheet system is created equal, and not every timesheet system is applicable to every business in the organization. You have to think about the things that really you need to track from a business to be able to display the information that or track the information that you're delivering. Now at a corporate level, you actually may need more detail so you can see the bigger picture after you get the minutia. So things like asking people to enter notes about what they've worked on so that you can always go back if there's some kind of audit to explain why a customer got charged for 6 hours. Recording 6 hours against a task that says ad hoc support and the note says consulting, that doesn't tell you a lot of information. Now you're having to go back to the user and they have to try to figure out what they did. So I encourage people to put notes on everything to explain, even at a high level, like, hey, working with so-and-so on these reports, or had a phone call to discuss this new design or this new need, or spent time unlocking users because everyone changed their password. Things like that are really helpful because it does give a justification to the hours and a way to audit the data. Often I see for companies where they're wanting the individuals to capture the location of where the work is being done. And for smaller companies like myself, I have to use that for tax reporting, so I can say where I earned the revenue throughout the U.S. So that's something that also gets added to the timesheet, because if you're putting the timesheet, you know what time you put in, then of course you want to be able to track the location you did that time in. So that's a natural fit as well. And definitely think in terms of, again, end user, make it simple. If there's a way to default that location, take advantage of that. And then last, from a corporate perspective of needing information associated to the timesheet, the corporation really drives typically the time period that you're putting time in. Some of you have weekly timesheets. Some of you have semi-monthly timesheets. I've even seen monthly timesheets. And those typically are lined up with how often do you do payroll so that you understand what actual hours have been recorded. How often do you do billing? If it's weekly billing, you tend to do weekly timesheets. If it's monthly billing, you could do a full gamut of different timesheets. But the corporation itself needs the timesheets to meet certain criteria so that they can actually run the business. And finally, from a timesheet best practices perspective, it's really understanding who is accountable for that time entry. Now, of course, it's the person who's typing it in, but there's some nuances to also think about what does that hour on the timesheet mean. Are you empowering your employees to decide what kind of work this is? So think in terms of examples like I worked on the grocery shopping project, and the work that I did was pushing the cart, okay, versus having a selection value that says on this grocery shopping project, I have pushing the cart, going down aisle 1 and purchasing my groceries. On this other grocery store project, I have buying a lottery ticket, going to Starbucks, and stocking the produce. So the task level tracking versus type of work is really related to, do you have a standard set of time codes associated to every project, and you let the individual say what kind of work they've done? Or do you have a task plan that the project manager is putting together, and the project manager is controlling what options they have to pick from? Okay, and that, again, the decision for there could actually be both or either in the same organization, because you have to actually, you may have different needs based on the types of contracts that you deliver. And then finally, the billable versus non-billable. The billable versus non-billable is an interesting discussion, I find, because it's really deciding who's making the decision that the work that they did should be billed to the customer. And for some of you, you've decided that the end user is the most knowledgeable, and they're the ones that should be saying, this hour is billable. And then there's a review process, and that review process makes the final decision to say whether they agree that it's billable or non-billable. And for the other half of you, you probably have it built into your project plan. So if they're recording time against the workshop is a billable activity. Therefore, that time is going to be billed. Okay. So there's really that also drives some of the timesheet capture is who makes the decision on what the standards are and who has the power to pick. And the last area on the best practices really notifications and compliance. So defining those policies around timesheets so that you can make sure that people understand what's expected of them and timing of timesheets. That's probably one of the biggest issues is people getting their timesheets in and getting them in on time. So set up alerts to remind people that their timesheets are overdue or late. I do see some customers sending out sort of that proactive or preventative or, that alert says, hey, reminder, it's Friday, get your timesheets in. I think those can be effective sort of at initial adoption, but maybe those are the kind of emails that people just delete or ignore because they know there's a standard message that's generated. So I always like to make sure the alerts minimize them, make sure that they only go out when there's action required, because then if they've already taken the action, they don't get bothered with it. If they forget to take the action, they have to get a notification. And maybe a couple of reminders, sort of an escalating pattern would be worthwhile. Make sure you have compliance reports so that you can measure if people are actually not being compliant or not. And some people have tried the whole wall of shame dashboard, so or sharing of the report of who's non-compliant. Some people are just not bothered by that. So the wall of shame may not actually be the end goal of what you want, but the compliance report certainly is something that you need in the organization, you should have in the organization, and you should highlight that to individuals, perhaps even as part of their performance evaluation, to make sure that they understand the importance of the timesheet, even though to them it may just be, okay, why do I have to tell you what I'm doing? I'm obviously doing a good job. Audit reports are something that you'll definitely need to have available in any tool that you pick because that leads me to our next bigger slide, and this actually is taken right from the web about the DCA compliance. So DCAA is a regulated compliance guideline for time capture to primarily work with federal accounts, and other companies have, of course, adopted this. But the guidelines here really rely heavily on prove that the data hasn't changed or that there's controls in place to prevent the data from being changed or controls in place to show how or why the data was changed. And always record actuals, right? So, and the first line alone probably turns everyone off, is that timesheets must be filled in every day. So those of you who are in finance are probably going, yay, and those of you who put timesheets in, you're going, boo, because the timesheets filled in every day is something, I do think that's the best practice. The time gets away from you. It's easy to forget what you did day after day. A lot of people will wait till the end of the week. I realize that's human nature, but a daily timesheet entry is officially DCA compliance. So that would be recommended as a general best practice, honestly. Definitely being able to see any kind of changes made to it from an audit trail perspective. Some systems will have like adjustment controls, who can do them, who can't do them, how does the adjustment look. And then being able to sign off on a timesheet with like an electronic approval workflow, for example, that records who did it. If somebody logs in as you or acts as you, that it records the actual person who did it. Those kind of things are all very much a consideration. But the one that I'm always interested in is the no future logging of time. Because I'm one of those, I personally think that you should always record actuals. I do understand time pressures happen, and you need to sort of do a best guess sometimes to get your timesheets in when you know there's more work coming. It just saves a lot of fixing on the back end.